Uncorked in conversation, where the stories start flowing. Ashley and Dawn keep the good vibes going. Grab your moment, take a sip, tune in. Uncorked in conversation, let's begin.
Welcome to Uncorked in Conversation. I am your host today, Dawn Bloch, Vice President and Chief People Officer, and I am here with my guest.
I'm Ashley Martin, President and CEO.
So we're doing a different spin on our podcast today. Today, you will get to hear from the last 4 generations of the Martin family. We have audio clips that we're going to be incorporating in. That will include audio clips from Ross, Lee, Rex, and then, of course, we have Ashley live and in person.
And so because it's Dawn and I today, we have a little special treat. We're going to have some champagne today as we have a conversation.
Woohoo! Wonderful. To kick us off today, we have a clip from Ross that was recorded in 1963.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Ross Martin, who is now treasurer of NIBCO. First thing I'm going to ask is, how did NIBCO get started, and what does the name actually mean? It's one of those contractions of initial letters, I'm sure, but how did it get out?
For every new employee, there's a handbook prepared. And the opening page in the handbook tells that story very well. This is under the title, so this is NIBCO. And the beginning of the company was back in 1904. And on November 12th, 1904, Casper Gottlieb Schweitzer, from his savings account, invested $1,200 in the First National Bank. He was a very skilled foundry foreman and a workman, but he wanted to be in business for himself, self-employed. So here was his way of getting the job started as being self-employed by opening a job shop brass foundry.
Okay, was he introduced as the treasurer of NIBCO?
He was introduced as treasurer of NIBCO in 1963 because Lee had just taken over as president. So they were going through a transition time, which we have just gone through as well. So we kind of understand that those do happen. And so, yeah. Ross was the treasurer because he was transitioning. It's hard to step away from NIBCO, and so I think he still wanted to be involved, but to be less involved, and so that was his way of taking a step back.
A $1,200 deposit to now an organization which I believe in the Elkhart area employs more than 600 persons.
That's about the distribution. Mm-hmm. And then 3 plants, and the total employment is around 1,300 people.
Mm-hmm. And what has brought about the rise in size, for one thing, and the efficiency of a concern like NIBCO? Is it because that you were geared toward the changes inherent in the 20th century? Is it something which was striven for right from the start?
Well, if we'd stood still, there'd still be 6 people working there, as there were in 1919 when I went to work. But I think the first and most outstanding detail is the expanding American industrial program. We have been a part of that program.
So I thought that clip was so interesting because he talks about not standing still. Otherwise, we'd still have 6 people here in Elkhart. But it just goes back to, continuous improvement has always been one of our core values. And that's something we always try to work on and try to get better at. And we can't stand still. Otherwise, we wouldn't make it, over 120 years.
Yeah, I agree. And I really liked that he said we would still have 6, but then at the time of that interview, we had 600 in Elkhart.
Yeah.
So just the drastic growth in that period of time, just of the associates we had in Elkhart. So I really like this next clip that we have from Ross because it's something that has been repeated throughout the generations. I know I've heard it several times throughout my 26 years. Your dad at Rex has said it. Ashley, you've said it. We all say it. So let's have a little commentary on this clip.
I know in your talk to the Newcomen Society, you said that your company's finest product, most important product, is a good man. Now, how does this fit into an industrial sense?
Well, of course, that's been the ideal of the company since the days when we began. We got out an annual handbook of information for employees. So the idea of the good man must precede the idea of the material facts of any industry. And so the good men that we have at NIBCO have largely grown from the people that began as beginners, even as I did, employees that grow from within. So very much is done to stimulate these people and to help them to become good citizens. And the better they are as good citizens, the better workmen they become.
We have to talk about that, he says good man, not good person, like we've seen in most of our literature here recently. And I do believe at the time he meant man. Now, he was a progressive person, so I think if he was in today's age, it would be a good person. But at that time, in 1963, I do believe he meant man. And I just think it was part of his age at the time and that he was nearing towards retirement. But if he was sentenced today, I do think it would be person. So that's why we have changed it and updated it. But I just had to point out that he does say good man.
And I do think he missed his calling a little bit with the HR stuff because he does continue to reference the employee handbook that I have seen the visual of this interview, and he actually has a physical copy of it in his hand, and he opens it to pages and references it throughout. So a man of many strengths, and clearly HR and just caring about our associates was definitely one of them.
Yeah, who knows? He could have been our first ever chief people officer.
Right.
The thing we haven't brought up during our discussions, Mr. Martin, is the ownership of NIBCO. Who owns the company?
Well, we're proud of the fact that NIBCO is owned by the employees, the people that work there. So that's very well brought out in this folder and the lecture that was given, and it's now printed form, and this will be distributed. Today, it's going out by mail to all the employees. More copies are available at the factory or through the employees. Anybody may want to catch up with this story as it was written here. So the idea of ownership, NIBCO is owned by the employees and by the biblical quote, which backs up each one of these, for where the treasure is, there will a heart be also. So we think that the man that owns property is a man as an individual, and the personality of that, the dignity that carries with it, is far more valuable to the community than the man that is merely one of the masses of people that exist behind the Iron Curtain. In more recent years, it's now overwhelmed the people of Cuba as well. So therefore, the ownership of the property in NIBCO, the ownership of shares of stock in NIBCO, is a very vital factor that stimulates and builds loyalty to the people that work there.
I will say employee ownership is one of the things that I am so proud of, that we've had it for over 100 years, that Ross, well, he didn't start it, but Casper did, and Ross really spread it to more and more associates. And so that we have that history, I think it means a lot. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to my family that our associates have not just given, their time and their effort into their positions. They have given financially too. And hopefully they feel like they've been rewarded by that with the stock price going up. But I do believe that ownership piece is what makes NIBCO different and our associates different.
Yeah, I would agree. And when you look at those times, that was not a common thing to happen for people, right? To be able to have that employee ownership option would not have been a thing 100 years ago. So when I think back to our core values too, and I think about innovation, clearly we're talking about products and that, but also just some of that mindset of being trailblazing way, way beyond the years there to have a program like that. And it is something that I hope all of our associates are very proud of. I know it's something I'm proud of. And to be able to say that I work for an organization that has been thinking about their associates for well farther than a lot of organizations could say today.
And I know our ESOP has been extremely successful. We have associates who are able to retire early because they have contributed to the ESOP and been a part of it for many, many years. And that's one of the things that Casper and Ross really wanted, is to be able to share the wealth of NIBCO with our associates.
I would say cheers to that. That's a great one.
Cheers.
Okay, well, so far this has been very interesting to me. I feel like we've just sat down and had an actual conversation with Ross. But let's fast forward. Let's move forward to Lee. And the next clips that we're going to hear, they were recorded in 1993, and specifically, he's talking a lot about World War II.
Hard to imagine the philosophy of the country at this time because people were really trying to help win the war and get involved in the effort. And the government had a system for prime contractors. If you made more money than you expected to when you bid a contract, you could voluntarily go to the government and be renegotiated. And if you didn't do it voluntarily, they might renegotiate you anyhow. The government had a right to examine your books. And my father we made so much money better than we thought we would that we voluntarily went and asked for renegotiation so that we could return some of the money to the government to help the war effort. We had a certain amount of money that we thought we should be making, and we did better than that, so we turned it back voluntarily. And I mean, we're not. I mean, you might think, well, these people got holes in their head. We don't have holes in our head, and we were not unduly patriotic. A lot of other did the same thing at that time. Renegotiation was common.
Such an interesting clip. So I would say, Ashley, does this remind you of anything else recently that's been happening?
It reminds me of a topic that we've been talking about a lot lately here, with the tariffs that have been going on the last year and a half, with the government back and forth. And in this clip, I do think it's interesting that he said we decided to go back and renegotiate. They wanted to make a certain level of profit, and they said we made that, and so here's the extra we made back, instead of having the government come and demand it back from them or maybe get even less than they wanted. Yeah. Lee was a very intelligent person. He was an engineer and really process oriented. One story that I do remember growing up, so Lee went to MIT, and he was very, very proud that he went to MIT and he was an engineer. So when he was in high school, he did so well that he actually won a full scholarship to go to MIT. And a big point of contention between Ross and Lee was that we could afford, to send Lee to school. And Ross thought that we should pay for school because we could afford it, and the scholarship should go to someone else that couldn't afford to go to school. Whereas Lee thought he had earned that scholarship. So Lee did go to MIT, but he did have to give the scholarship up, and we paid for him to go so that someone else could take that scholarship and also attend MIT.
Mm-hmm. I can understand where there would have been that conflict, because he's like, I worked really hard to earn this, but on the flip side of it, I see where Ross was coming from as well. What that clip really resonates with me and the story about MIT is that they were always concerned and looking for ways to give back to the community.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What do you mean, scrap?
Well, when you pour metal in the foundry, you don't know what you're going to get. And sometimes it comes out unusable. It's called scrap. So you have to melt it again and try over.
Oh, okay.
We were running 40% scrap.
Well, you were just learning.
That's right. But when I left it after after 8 months, we got it down to under 10% scrap, which was tolerable, very tolerable for that time. And I was single, and this great pressure was on about the war, so I quit and registered for the draft. I gave up my deferment, and I went in the service in 44.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which branch?
Navy. Just went in. I was just drafted. I was an enlisted man.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And you were in the rest
Till
of
the
the
end
war?
of the war, yeah.
Did you ever get on ship?
No, never did. I spent 10 months at Treasure Island in San Francisco.
Is that right?
That's as far as I got.
Yeah.
The war was over, and then I wanted to come back here, and I was able to get a
You just wanted, did you just feel that you had a duty to go in the Navy?
Well, I did, and my father did. My father, as I said, had been a captain in World War I, and he had some strong feelings about the military and what we should do. So
you were young.
Oh, sure. Well, I was 23 years old when I came here.
One thing for sure that clip taught us is that Nacogdoches should say thank you to Lee Martin for the scrap rate reduction.
Lee did have a soft spot for Nacogdoches. He really liked the plant there and living there for a little bit. So one of the other things that clip doesn't go into is he talks about he enlisted and he made it to San Francisco. Well, that's where he met my grandmother. She was from San Francisco. And so if he hadn't have enlisted and signed up for duty, he wouldn't have met my grandmother. And she then told me a story later that they got married and they moved to Elkhart when the war ended. And he moved her to the old mill, and she had not lived outside of California. And so not only did he move her states away, he did not move her into town, as she called it. She lived far away from everyone. So she said she made it a year before she told him, "You move me into town or I'm leaving you."
The old mill is very rural still today in the area, so I can imagine.
But she came here. She didn't know anyone. She wanted to make friends and meet people.
And
it was hard living at the old mill to meet people.
Hard to do that there, exactly. Okay, so next we're going to hear some clips from Rex Martin, and these were recorded in circa 2004.
My grandfather, Ross, really loved this property. And I can remember many times when I was a young teenager, 13, 14, 15, he would bring my brother and me out here, and we would chop wood. When he got into his later years, 65, 70, he loved to come out here and work with the trees. And so we would come out here with him on a Sunday or a Saturday, and we would spend all day splitting wood, hardwood, for people's fireplaces, fill up a pickup truck full of it, and go deliver it to some individual that he deemed needed firewood for the winter. We had many long chats during that time. Those experiences at the time were not something that I found particularly pleasurable, but now looking back at them, it was a way for my grandfather to impart to me some of his wisdom, some of his values, and the things that were important to him, and they have made a big impression on me during the remainder of my life.
And what was that property, Ashley?
So he is talking about the old mill where my grandmother Jerry got to live for a period of time. Apparently, Ross loved it so much, he let his son and his new bride live there for a while. And we still own it. We still like to do some events out there. I am working with our team actually on seeing what more we can do out there so we can use it more throughout the year and not just for special events in the summertime.
It is a truly beautiful property. It is. I could see where your family's love for the property would have come from.
Yes. And I will say it's nice now. My husband, I know, takes our son out there, and my sister's husband takes Ace out there. So it's still used. I don't think they're out there chopping wood. I want to be clear. So don't expect any firewood anytime soon. But they are out there enjoying nature and the river.
The time I was about 8 or 10 years old, I knew what I was going to do with my life. And I knew I was going to run NIBCO. And so when that finally occurred in 1986, it was a very exciting moment for me. My father and I were attending an ASA convention, which is our industry convention, in Las Vegas in 1985, in the fall of 1985. And at that point, he told me that it was his plan that at the annual meeting in 1986, I would be named president. So that was the defining moment for me when reality struck and I was going to be named president.
How did you feel?
I felt excited, a little bit afraid. It's a big responsibility, and I was relatively young at 36 years old. But it was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. So I was very, very excited. When an individual leads a company where there are 2,000 or 3,000 associates, you have a large responsibility to those associates to keep them employed, and also have a large responsibility to the shareholder base to earn them adequate returns on their investment. There's also responsibilities to the vendors that supply your company, and so there's a whole variety of stakeholders that you have a lot of responsibilities to, and I take that very seriously.
Okay, that sparks a question in me for Ashley. So Rex was talking about when Lee announced to him that he was going to move him into the presidency. Do you recall when Rex told you that he was going to do that? Do you remember where you were? Rex is like, I know exactly where I was for that moment because I know this has been a lifetime dream for you as well.
So I remember when he came into my office, and it was corner one over there, and he told me that I was going to be executive vice president, which kind of meant that the next step would be president.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do remember that when he told me I was going to be executive vice president, and it meant I was not just in charge of sales, but in charge of a couple other big parts of NIBCO.
Mm-hmm.
That basically that meant I was on the track to be president.
Yeah.
I do remember that conversation. And I think, no, wait, I was already on the board, I think, at that time. But yes, I do
Yeah.
remember that conversation.
So funny that you say that because I remember that as well because Rex called me to tell me that he was going to name you the executive vice president of the company. And I just remember he was so excited that this was going to be happening. And he wanted to do something very special for you. And he asked me if I would be part of it. And so I remember that part as well.
I believe that preparing the company for the fifth generation is in the best interest of the shareholders and the associates. Because if we didn't do that, one of the biggest alternatives or largest alternatives was to sell the company. And if we sell the company, ultimately, probably all the jobs in Elkhart, Indiana will go away at the corporate headquarters, and it will no longer be the NIBCO that we know and love. And ultimately, everybody's job would be in jeopardy.
Many of the interviews that we've done have paid tribute to your father and grandfather and to you. What do you hope NIBCO's 200th presentation will say about the Rex Martin years? Not so much you know, what are you hoping to leave behind?
I'm hoping to leave behind a legacy where we continue to invest appropriately in the company and earn good returns for our shareholders while we continue to be a good corporate citizen and we give back in the communities that we operate in.
Okay, so in that clip, Rex was talking about the fifth generation of NIBCO, which is you, our CEO. What do you hope that the sixth generation will say about your leadership?
About my leadership, I hope they will say, that I really took the time to listen to people. I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I try to listen to everyone because we do really have experts here. From the people in the plant who have worked on the same machine for 20 years, they know exactly what they're doing. So my job is to listen to our associates and then make the best decision for NIBCO based on that feedback. And so I hope that's what the sixth generation would say about me, is that I listened and I took that feedback.
Okay, so there's really only one person that we didn't get to hear from today, and that's Casper. So Ashley, if he were to walk through NIBCO today, what would surprise him the most, and what would he recognize immediately?
So I have to be honest, I think he would be very surprised that we have a female leader. You have to remember this is 120 years ago when he was running his business, and foundry work was men's work, right?
Yeah.
Because it was dirty and hard. And so I think that would surprise him. And I think he would be happy that we have stuck to American manufacturing, that we are still here in the United States, and that we have continued to grow. He started with 6 people. And I think when he left, there was, around 60, I think. And so that we've continued to grow, I think, that would look the same to him.
Yeah. Okay, at this point in the podcast, I'm going to shift over to Ashley as the guest for the remainder of the questions. And I would like to start with, what's the most important lesson you've inherited from your family predecessors?
I think the most important thing that they taught me is to give back to the communities that we are in. It has been such an integral part of my family that we've always done that and been a part of it. And it truly is because those communities have given so much to us. And, I can remember Lee, when I was probably like 8 or 10 years old, gave me a marble. And it said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." And of course, at that time, I didn't really know what that meant.
Right. As an 8 or 10-year-old, that's
Right.
fair.
So he had to explain it to me. But I distinctly remember this core memory of him explaining it to me and saying, like, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated. And so that always stood out to me as a memory that I learned from my grandfather.
I think that's a great answer. And if you look just through all the generations of your family, that shines through continuously. I mean, it was 2018 that we made it an official fifth core value. Well past the time it should have been.
I was going to say, it took us a while to make it official, but yes, underlying it has been there for a very long time.
Yeah, we got there finally. Okay, I'm just going to go right into my next question. As we look at the spirit of being 250th celebration for America, how has the American spirit of entrepreneurship influenced NIBCO's success?
I mean, I think that's how we started, right? My great-great-grandfather, Casper, wanted his own business. He knew he had this skill, and he took his $1,200 savings and started NIBCO. He wanted to have that ownership piece and do something for himself. And so I think, he had to have that entrepreneurial spirit to be able to go out and do that. It wasn't given to him. It wasn't, he didn't know anyone in Elkhart when he came here. He just knew there was a customer here. And so he really had to have that drive to make the business successful.
Yeah, and I would say not only that, like every generation that's come after him has had that same spirit of which everyone's kind of left their mark, on NIBCO along the way, but it's all been driven out of continuing to push us forward. I mean, like the clip we heard earlier, if we would have stood still, there'd still be 6 NIBCO associates.
And
right?
that's it.
So it's taken each generation to continue to find that spark of entrepreneurship, which like, okay, what's the next big thing NIBCO should be focusing on?
Definitely. I think we've had it, like you said, in every generation, but obviously the way we started sparked everything.
And we've talked a lot about associates, right? The clips talked about the handbook and different part of associates. You've spoke that into a lot of the things that you've brought to the podcast today. So keeping on those lines, and I know we've talked about ESOP, right? So we've talked about like how NIBCO has done things for associates, right? But I'm curious as to your opinion of how associates have contributed to NIBCO's legacy.
Well, I think they've not just contributed their time and effort into making NIBCO the company it is today. They've contributed financially. I mean, they're part of the ESOP. They're part of the 401k. They've put their money, into the business to make sure it's successful. And so, they've done it in those 3 ways to me and really made NIBCO what it is today, and that we are an ESOP. Our associates are owners. They take that ownership very seriously, and they make decisions as owners. When they're thinking about spending money, they're thinking about, oh, what if this was my money?
Right.
And so, and I think that's an important part of how they've continued to make NIBCO such a great company. But I'm sure there's countless ways, but those are the 3. Like they've contributed their time and their effort, but also financially to make NIBCO the company it is today.
Okay, well, this has been especially fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you as well, Ashley. Really taking the trip down memory lane and talking to all the different presidents that we've had, right? Different leaders that we've had along the way. And in honor of America's 250th, really putting it into perspective, we've been around for half that amount of time, which is a very big deal for a family-owned and operated company.
Yes, it's something I'm extremely proud of and so honored that we could highlight all the leaders of NIBCO, except for Casper, but we got him sprinkled in there a little bit.
We did.
But I also thought it was fun, to sprinkle in some family memories too. So you can hear a little bit about that side.
Yeah, that's great. And I do appreciate your time today. I want to end with one more question. If NIBCO's history could teach America one lesson as it enters into the next chapter, what would that lesson be?
I think that lesson would be ownership. Ownership is such a key part to NIBCO, that our associates own NIBCO. And I think our country could learn about getting that buy-in and getting people together around a common goal and a common mission to continue for another 250 years.
Well, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate your time. And I do want to give a shout out to Angie Fan for getting all the clips for today's podcast and compiling all of that for us. So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to NIBCO. Cheers to 250th America.